My daughter took my pension for a trip. What she found in the fridge made her scream. Eleanor Whitman had lived in the same small house in Dayton, Ohio, for nearly 40 years. The house wasn't remarkable. The paint on the porch railing was chipped, the mailbox leaned slightly to one side, and the old maple tree in the front yard dropped its leaves every autumn like clockwork. It wasn't modern or stylish, but it was paid for, and to Eleanor, that meant everything. At 68, Eleanor was retired, though her life still ran on discipline. She woke up early every morning, brewed her coffee carefully, and planned her days the same way she always had. Routine wasn't boring to her. It was survival. For more than 4 decades, Eleanor had worked as a cafeteria assistant at a public elementary school. She arrived before sunrise, prepared meals for hundreds of children, cleaned until her hands ached, and never complained. The job didn't pay much, but it paid steadily. And steady was what Eleanor trusted. Her pension was modest. It didn't allow for vacations, shopping sprees, or emergencies. But it covered groceries, electricity, medication, and independence. After her husband Robert passed away 7 years earlier, that pension became her lifeline. Robert had been the talker, the storyteller. Eleanor had been the quiet one, the listener, the planner. When Robert died suddenly of a heart attack, the house changed. Not loudly, just deeply. Silence filled the rooms. Eleanor learned to live with it. She filled her days with small rituals, watering plants, clipping coupons, reading the local newspaper at the kitchen table. She measured everything: money, food, time. Waste frightened her. Eleanor had one child. Her daughter, Melissa, was 34 and restless. She moved from state to state, job to job, relationship to relationship. Nothing ever seemed to last. Eleanor never judged her. Whenever Melissa called asking for help, Eleanor sent what she could. After Robert's death, the calls became fewer. Holidays passed with short messages instead of visits. Eleanor told herself it was normal. Young people had busy lives. She didn't want to pressure her daughter. Then one rainy afternoon in March, there was a knock at the door. Eleanor wasn't expecting anyone. When she opened it, she froze. Melissa stood there with a suitcase and tired eyes. "Mom," Melissa said quietly. Eleanor pulled her into a hug without asking a single question. "You're home," she whispered. "I just need somewhere to stay for a bit," Melissa said. Things didn't work out. Eleanor waved her inside. For the first time in years, the house felt alive again. Eleanor cooked full meals. She set 2 plates on the table. She listened as Melissa talked about traffic, bad bosses, and how unfair life felt. Melissa avoided details about what went wrong. Eleanor noticed, but stayed silent. She was afraid that asking questions might push her daughter away again. Melissa slept late, stayed on her phone, and helped very little around the house. Eleanor noticed that too. Still, she said nothing. 2 weeks later, they sat at the kitchen table drinking tea. "Mom," Melissa said suddenly, tapping her mug, "can I talk to you about something?" "Of course," Eleanor replied. "I feel stuck," Melissa said. "Like my life is just one mistake after another." Eleanor reached across the table and held her hand. "Everyone feels that way sometimes." "I need a reset," Melissa continued. "A short trip. Somewhere warm. Somewhere I can think." Eleanor hesitated. "Trips cost money." Melissa looked down. "I know, but you have your pension savings, right?" Eleanor's chest tightened. "That money is for bills," she said carefully. "Food, medicine. I'll pay you back," Melissa said quickly. "I just need help right now." Eleanor looked at her daughter's face, tired, hopeful, desperate. It reminded her of the little girl who used to crawl into her bed after nightmares. "How much?" Eleanor asked softly. Melissa named an amount. It was nearly half of Eleanor's savings. That night, Eleanor didn't sleep. She lay awake doing math in her head, calculating what she could cut back on. She told herself she was being selfish. What kind of mother put money before her child? 2 days later, Eleanor transferred the money. Melissa hugged her tightly. "You're the best mom," she said. "I won't forget this." Melissa left the next morning. The house went quiet again, but this time, the silence felt heavier. Eleanor adjusted. She bought cheaper food. She stopped buying fruit. She turned off lights constantly. She began taking half doses of her medication. She told herself it was temporary. Then she saw the photos. Melissa smiling on a beach. Melissa holding colorful drinks. Melissa shopping. Each picture felt like a quiet betrayal. Weeks passed. Melissa didn't call. When Eleanor finally texted, Melissa replied hours later, busy. Trip is really helping. Eleanor's hands shook as she put the phone down. When Melissa returned weeks later, she looked relaxed, healthy, happy. Eleanor wanted to feel relief. Instead, she felt tired. The next morning, Eleanor woke early and sat at the kitchen table sipping coffee. She heard the refrigerator door open. Then came the scream. Sharp, terrified, Eleanor rushed into the kitchen. Melissa stood frozen, staring into the fridge. Inside were plastic containers labeled in Eleanor's handwriting. Milk, rationed vegetables, final week medication, half-dose emergency savings, empty. What is this? Melissa whispered. That's how I've been managing, Eleanor said calmly. Melissa collapsed into a chair. You were skipping food, she cried. I was surviving, Eleanor replied. Tears streamed down Melissa's face. Why didn't you tell me? You didn't ask, Eleanor said gently. The silence between them was crushing. I thought you were okay, Melissa sobbed. You always say you're fine. That's what parents do, Eleanor said. That moment changed everything. Melissa stayed. She found a job. She paid rent. She bought groceries. She learned responsibility. Trust didn't return overnight, but it returned. The fridge filled again, not just with food, but with respect. This was not a story about money. It was a story about boundaries, sacrifice, and the cost of silence. And sometimes, the loudest lessons come from the quietest people. Please support me and subscribe my channel.